Floods continue to cause havoc in Morocco. For Ahmed El Abachi, Ramadan is usually a time of joyous family feasts. But this year he breaks his fast in a tent. Floods that battered northwestern Morocco forced him from his village weeks ago. Now, like many evacuees, he wonders when or if he can return home. What we normally prepare with our children is not the same as what we prepare here in the tent. There are several things missing from our table, like juice and the delicious dishes we can't find. We are making do until this crisis passes and we can go back home. Between December 2025 and February 2026, two major floods struck Morocco, exposing dangerous urban vulnerability and severe strain on the country's river basins. We have a tradition during Ramadan after breaking the fast. We go to the mosque or to the cafes after the prayer to meet up with our loved ones. But this year, with the floods and these difficult days, we are living from day to day, moment by moment. For example, even just going to get some hot water, it is difficult for us. We do not sleep because we are afraid the house will collapse on our heads and on our children. We do not sleep peacefully like others who have nice houses far from the river. Moroccan authorities have now launched an emergency support program helping families rebuild their homes and livelihoods after the devastating floods.
A powerful snowstorm struck northeast United States, bringing blizzard conditions from Maryland to Maine.
Heavy snowfall and strong winds have forced millions of residents indoors as officials declared states of emergency across the region. More than 40 million people across the northeastern U.S. were under severe weather warnings as a powerful nor'easter swept through the region. Air travel ground to a halt with more than 5,700 flights cancelled. Train and bus services were suspended, leaving commuters stranded. Thousands of homes and businesses lost power as the storm intensified, and wind gusts reaching 113 kilometers per hour raised the risk of falling trees and prolonged outages.
In New York City, a state of emergency continues to remain in effect. The normally bustling streets were nearly empty as the snowstorm blanketed the city. More than 2,600 sanitation workers and 2,300 plows have been deployed to clear the streets. Mayor Zoran Mamdani has ordered residents to remain off the roads. Non-essential travel ban kept most residents indoors, while buses and ambulances fitted with snow chains moved slowly through Manhattan.
Major tourist hubs like Times Square stood nearly empty, and even the United Nations headquarters in Manhattan suspended operations as the storm brought daily life to a halt. Across Brooklyn and surrounding areas, shops and restaurants remained closed as the storm disrupted daily life.
Central Park transformed into a winter playground as New Yorkers ventured out after heavy snowfall. With schools closed, many children were seen sledding down snowy hills, while families built snowmen and park-goers staged snowball fights. Central Park recorded nearly 20 inches of snow by Monday afternoon, the largest accumulation in over a decade.
So it's pretty strange because this is where you come for Manhattan Henge, and you can see all the way through to New Jersey where the sun sets. And now here, like today, because of the snow, you can't see past Grand Central, and it's all gray and dark, which is also very nice and peculiar, but kind of scary too.
In Boston, blizzards forced widespread flight cancellations, disrupted travel, and left streets coated in deep drifts. In Hull, Massachusetts, towering waves slammed into oceanfront homes as the snowstorm brought about massive coastal flooding and fierce winds apart from heavy snowfall. And there's more on this from our correspondent, Susan Tehrani, who sent us this report from New York.
Here in New York City, officials say the worst of the powerful winter storm has now passed, but the impact is still everywhere you look. After hours of heavy snow, strong winds, And near whiteout conditions, crews are now shifting from emergency response to cleanup mode across the 5 boroughs here in New York City. Now, the city's travel ban has been lifted, but officials are continuing to warn New Yorkers to stay cautious as streets not only remain very icy, but also the weather can change very quickly, and the wind is still very strong. So now the focus is all on recovery, digging out and restoring normal service. As you can see, the transit service, which has been operating throughout even the storm, continues to operate with the buses and trains in full service. Some stores, notably the Cornerstones and bodegas, continue to operate as well. And while that travel ban, as I mentioned, has been lifted, the city streets are pretty calm, at least for now.
First at 11, pushback across Metro Detroit tonight as ICE attempts to expand operations into more neighborhoods. Thank you for joining us for 7 News Detroit at 11. I'm Mike Duffy. Fierce protests unfolded tonight outside Romulus City Hall as demonstrators clashed. At the center of this debate is a vacant building that's been purchased by ICE to use as a detention facility. Tonight, the city council unanimously passing a resolution to oppose this. Just yesterday, the building on Cogswell Street was hit with graffiti. Neighbors say that already this has been an unwelcome disruption to their community. But the federal government says it's needed and will help the economy. 7 News Detroit reporter Darren Cunningham raising the voices of neighbors and taking a closer look at the next steps.
Citizens showed up en masse to Romulus City Hall, voicing their opposition to a proposed ICE detention center coming to this community. Things got dicey during that rally, as you'll see in a moment. After all of that, the city council unanimously approved a resolution stating that an ICE detention center would be a drag on this city. A tussle between anti-ICE protesters and counter-protesters who showed up to disrupt the rally outside Romulus City Hall. This is the commotion that played out ahead of a regularly scheduled city council meeting. Hundreds of people opposing the federal government's plan to convert a warehouse into an ICE detention center. We were right in the middle of it.
We have to let them know what's going on here is not right.
According to the federal government, the facility is going inside the former Gage Marketing Group headquarters in Romulus. They say it will create hundreds of jobs and contribute about $160 million to Michigan's economy. However, State Senator Mallory McMorrow, who attended the rally, says the facility is a detriment.
It's horrifying, especially when you learn that ICE outbid an auto supplier to buy a warehouse. That is taking away jobs, economic development that the community needs to use a warehouse to house people. And what we know is more than 80% of those who ICE detains have no criminal record.
During the council meeting, the crowd chanted, "Let us in." Only about 30 to 40 community members got in because the room was at capacity. The crowd inside pleased to hear the council pass a resolution opposing the detention center.
The presence of a detention center may depress property values, deter business investments, and impose long-term negative impacts inconsistent with the city's development goals.
It was welcome news from all who came to make their voice heard.
And I think that's proof that this works. We mobilized, we stood out here, we chanted, we fought back.
Yet some not convinced it goes far enough.
It will take a lot more of that, of mass mobilization, strikes, walkouts, direct action to actually stop this from happening.
During that meeting, the mayor said that the city will not issue a permit or a certificate of occupancy unless mandated by a federal judge to do so.
I'm in Romulus where a protest is underway. It's in response to the federal government purchase a building to be a ICE detention facility, but they're not protesting against their local government. Their mayor has condemned this building, including state legislators. They don't want it here. That's why they're protesting now. And this past weekend, we've even seen the building being vandalized with spray paint and paint. So this protest will lead into a city hall meeting tonight where others may continue to voice their concerns at the meeting. The protest is taking a different turn. There is someone here who is for ICE. This has really startled the protesters as well. Punches have been thrown. Police are currently here now. We're trying to stay safe from a distance, but there is some opposition here at the protest.
Now, Mexico has resorted to large-scale troop deployment to quell clashes that have claimed dozens of lives. Clashes have been sparked in the aftermath of the killing of the country's most wanted drug lord. Nicimo Oseguera, also known as El Mencho, was killed in an operation in the Jalisco state. The news of his death has triggered a wave of violence, with cartel members blocking roads in 20 states and also torching vehicles and businesses. According to the authorities, more than 70 people have died in the attempt to capture El Mencho and also in the aftermath. The body count taken by security officials includes security forces, suspected cartel members and others. Now, the officials have not offered any details, and the circumstances of most of these deaths are said to be unclear. The Mexican military continues to remain deployed at the site of the military operation that captured and killed the cartel leader El Mencho. And the government has sent an additional 2,500 troops to Jalisco, which happens to be one of the host cities in this year's FIFA World Cup, bringing the troop deployment to over 10,000 since Sunday. The residents also reported road blockades in El Mencho's birthplace in Michoacan state. The photographs shared on social media accounts showed columns of black smoke floating above the mountain village. The violence has also gripped the resort city of Puerto Vallarta, which is popular with the U.S. tourists, and satellite images collected by Vantor showed dozens of fires across the city. Travel warnings from U.S., Britain, Canada, India and several other countries have been issued in the fallout, with dozens of flights being cancelled. Now, El Mencho entered into the drug trade with Sinaloa cartel and then later formed the Jalisco New Generation cartel. Now, the United States had declared a bounty of $15 million on his head, and Mexico had said that the operation to seize El Mencho was held by the complementary information from U.S. authorities. And after El Mencho's killing, one name has begun to gain prominence, and that is of Abraham Jesus Ambris Cano, known as El Yogurt. He's being seen as El Mencho's successor. At 28 years of age, he's identified by federal authorities as one of the main regional chiefs of the criminal group and is being responsible for an armed structure with a presence in the western and southeastern regions of the country. Born in March of 1997, El Yogurt, in fact, began his criminal career in the ranks of Los Viagra. The organization was a part of Carteles Unidos, a bloc that confronted Kling in the Tierra Caliente region.
Cartel leaders in the country. The Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, responded incredibly violently and burned buses and other vehicles like this, basically blockading roads and bringing the state and many other Mexican states to a standstill. Now, this capture was part of larger efforts by the government of Claudia Sheinbaum to crack down on cartels and effectively offset pressures by the Trump administration. But it's not provoking concerns by many people that this could produce another wave of violence in the months leading up to the World Cup that is being hosted in Mexico, the U.S., and Canada.
Police in Haiti exchanged gunfire with alleged kidnappers in downtown Port-au-Prince on Monday, marking another violent episode in the capital's relentless security crisis. Witnesses say the group was posing as officers wearing police uniform and driving a government vehicle. Unconfirmed reports indicate 2 policemen and 2 suspected kidnappers were killed. The shootout followed reports of abductions at false checkpoints where drivers are stopped and seized. Earlier this month, Haitian National Police killed 2 alleged kidnappers while foiling an abduction attempt in the Delmas neighborhood. On Friday, the U.S. Embassy warned employees of an increase in kidnappings for ransom, particularly in Delmas. Observers warn despite occasional police actions, abductions remain a primary revenue source for gangs, which now control an estimated 90% of Port-au-Prince and large territories nationwide.
Rahul Gandhi, the leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha, has come out in support of the members of the Congress Party's youth wing who staged a protest at the India AI Global Summit last week. Rahul Gandhi put up a post on social media to show his support for the protesters, who he regarded as lions. He also condemned the arrest of 8 Indian Youth Congress activists in connection with the demonstration. This includes Youth Congress President Uday Bhanu Chip. He was arrested earlier on Tuesday, and a Delhi court sent him to police custody for 4 days in connection with the protest. Members of the Youth Congress had staged a protest at the India AI Global Summit last Friday. They took off their shirts to display slogans on them that criticized the new India-US trade deal and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. 7 Youth Congress members were later arrested in connection with the demonstration. Uday Bhanu Chip is the 8th person to be detained by the police. The Bharatiya Janata Party has alleged that Rahul Gandhi is the true mastermind behind these protests. A BJP spokesperson claimed that Uday Bhanu Chip will reveal the link to Rahul Gandhi while in police custody, and that the long arm of the law will reach anyone who tries to defame India. Anger against Serbia's President Alexander Vučić is intensifying. There is anger against corruption coupled with fury at the high cost of living. This is leading Serbians to take to the streets. And in the latest, the country's farmers are staging roadblocks to demonstrate against high agricultural production costs. Take a look.
We are ready for all, and we will push to the end. We will not stop at this, and we will not back down. There were also days, with good weather, we should have been in the fields by now, but there is no going back. This is the top rock bottom.
Welcome to my show. It's me, Dhriti Yatri, bringing you the top news from all around the globe that keeps you updated. Let's start with it. First of all, Tehran's direct warning to Washington here. Iran declares, "We will sink them all," signaling zero tolerance for the US naval escalation here. The message is sharp, public, and aimed directly at American warship. USS Gerald R. Ford enters strategic waters. That's right, America's most advanced carrier projects power amid rising Middle East tension. Now its presence alone, it shifts military calculations across the region. Destroyer USS Winston S. Churchill, it joins the formation. Guided missile capabilities strengthen the US floating fortress in contested sea. Together, the striking group, it signals readiness, not the routine patrol. IRGC dismisses the US deployment as political theatre. Tehran calls the show of force propaganda and not a real deterrent. Well, Iran insists that it will respond decisively to any escalation. Trump says that he is considering the military action here. One word from the US president rattles the markets and allies. Well, defense analysts say that even verbal signals, it can trigger the escalation. European Union blacklists the IRGC under counter-terror laws. Yes, Brussels escalates sanction, triggering a fierce diplomatic backlash, while the move freezes assets and restricts the travel across Europe. Iran labels European Union naval and air forces terrorist, a retaliatory move that widens the rift with NATO-aligned power. Now this tit-for-tat step, it marks a serious diplomatic downgrade. Sanction spiral deepens, Europe-Iran divide. Asset freeze and travel bans intensify diplomatic frost, while the trust between the two sides appears to be eroding rapidly. Nuclear talks under fresh strain. Rhetoric sharpens as fragile negotiations face renewed uncertainty here. Diplomats warn that the window for compromise is now narrowing. Jordan draws a red line. Amman refuses use of its territory for any strike on Iran. Well, the decision reflects domestic pressure and regional caution. Strategic geography shift military calculation. Jordan's location makes access, a decisive factor in regional operations. Airspace corridor could determine the feasibility of any strike. Russia evacuates tourists from Cuba. Fuel shortages force emergency flights amid the tightening sanction. Nearly 5,000 visitors were at risk of being stranded. Aeroflot switches to extraction mode now. Return-only missions highlight logistical strain on Havana. Aircraft minimize ground time amid the severe jet fuel scarcity. United States pressure on Nicolas Maduro impacts the oil flow now. Sanctions enforcement disrupts Cuba's critical fuel lifeline. Energy shortages ripple across transport and public services. Vladimir Putin vows support for Havana. Moscow signals that it will not abandon its Caribbean partner. The crisis revives the Cold Era war strategic undertone. Manchester rally turns violent. Clashes erupt between Britain First supporters and counter-protesters. Police imposed dispersal orders to prevent further escalation. Stand Up to Racism confronts Britain First. Opposing visions of immigration collide in city streets, while the confrontation exposed the deep social and political divide. Jeremy Corbyn calls for unity. Yes, former Labour chief, he urges Britons to reject the division and hate. Now his speech drew loud support for counter-protesters. Mike Huckabee's Greater Israel remarks, it sparks the outrage. Religious conferences ignite diplomatic protests across the Arab world. Governments demand clarity on official US policy. Arab League and OIC demand clarification here. Regional blocs seek assurances amid the rising of the territorial rhetoric here. Leaders warn that the words alone can inflame the tension. New York declares state of emergency. City braces for potential historic blizzard here. Officials urge the residents to avoid any non-essential travel for now. Zoran Mamdani activates full snow response. Road closures and travel ban aim to prevent the chaos. Emergency crews and snowplows, they remain on standby. Thousands of flights cancelled across the South Asia. Airports grind to a halt as blizzard warning expand. Passengers face delays stretching into the week. El Mencho killed in Mexican security operation. That's right, CJNG leader Nemencio falls after a fierce firefight, but the cartel quickly launched violent retaliation. CJNG retaliates with highway arson. Burning trucks and blocked roads paralyze the parts of Mexico. In the meantime, authorities deploy extra force to restore the order. $15 million US bounty ends. Washington has labeled El Mencho a top fentanyl trafficker, while his death leaves a dangerous power vacuum behind. Russia signs $589 million arms deal with Iran. Moscow deepens military cooperation amid the regional uncertainty. The agreement signals a tightening strategic partnership. 9K-333 Verba system headed to Tehran. Portable air defenses threaten low-flying jets and drones, while the system enhances Iran's lead air shield. S-300 PMU-2 shields repositioned over Iranian cities. Long-range missile system fortify the key strategic zones. Airspace protection around major hubs appears reinforced here. US-China jets shadow each other over Yellow Sea. F-16s and J-16s conduct tense aerial signaling without a single bullet here. Analysts warn that the margin for error is shrinking in contested skies.
The Persian Gulf is a powder keg, and the fuse is burning short. 2 American supercarriers sit on the horizon, a massive display of sheer, unmatched kinetic power. But behind the massive deployment of Washington, the calculation is changing as the threat of an Iranian strike looms larger than ever.
The world's most lethal military machine is moving into position. It is a terrifying symphony of hardware. Over a dozen warships, fighter jets and guided missiles designed to erase any target on the map. This is American power in its rawest form. First came the USS Abraham Lincoln. Now USS Gerald R. Ford is rushing to the region. Each carrier carries up to 5,000 sailors and dozens of fighter jets, FA-18 Super Hornets, electronic warfare aircraft, surveillance planes, guided missile destroyers guarding the perimeter. Yet, for all the fire and fury at his disposal, the US Commander-in-Chief is facing a brutal strategic reality. Iran is reminding the enemy at the gates that it is not going to be subdued. It wants diplomacy but is completely ready for war.
Regardless of these threats, Iran is committed to defending the national interests and rights of the Iranian people. Once we feel that the other side is using the negotiation process for deception, we will definitely take appropriate positions.
Washington insists the deployment is about deterrence, a show of strength to prevent escalation. But US officials privately acknowledge the risk. Any direct strike on Iran could trigger large-scale retaliation. That is the calculation now dominating strategic briefings. Trump is wondering, why is Iran so defiant?
The president asked me that this morning, and I don't want to use the word frustrated. It's almost because he understands he's got plenty of alternatives. But it's curious. He's curious as to why they haven't, I don't want to use the word capitulated, but why they haven't capitulated.
Tehran has spent years building a layered arsenal, ballistic missiles with ranges that can hit US bases across West Asia, cruise missiles designed to skim low and evade radar, fast attack boats swarming narrow waters of the Persian Gulf, armed drones tested in real battlefields. Iran's military claims they can target American warships if conflict erupts. Coastal missile batteries line strategic choke points. The Strait of Hormuz remains a pressure point for global oil supplies. America's firepower is unmatched. Its navy remains the most dominant on Earth. But military supremacy does not erase geography, or politics, or asymmetry. Two carriers signal readiness. Iran signals resolve. The question now is not who is stronger, it is who blinks first. Bureau Report WION, World is One.
A podcast, a microphone, and one sentence. And suddenly, diplomacy is on fire. Welcome to Times XP, and it all began with comments made by the US Ambassador Mike Huckabee. Not in a press conference, not in an official White House statement, but during a podcast conversation with Tucker Carlson. And you know what he suggested? He suggested that Israel would be justified in controlling large parts of the Middle East. And that one line, it was enough. Enough to shake capitals, enough to trigger the outrage, enough to force Washington into damage control. In fact, across the Arab world, reactions were swift. Statements, private calls, diplomatic warning. Because the region is already tensed, and words, specifically from American officials, they carry weight, heavy weight. Behind the scenes, senior officials from the Trump administration, they moved quickly. Phone lines lit up. Messages were sent to Arab governments. The clarification was simple, that those comments, they were personal views, not official US policy here. In fact, Deputy Secretary of State Chris, he reportedly reassured the partners. Well, there has been no change in America's formal position, no green light for expansion, no policy shift. But in diplomacy, reassurance after controversy, it is never easy. Because once a statement is out, it cannot be unheard. Now, this controversy lands at a very sensitive time. The US has been trying to deepen Israel's integration into the region, encourage normalization, build the new partnership, strengthen economic and security ties. But trust is delicate, rather very delicate. Now, add another layer here. President Donald Trump has previously said that he does not support Israeli annexation of the West Bank. Now, that position was meant to calm the fear, to show some sort of balance here to avoid inflaming the tension. So when an ambassador appears to suggest something broader, questions erupt. Is policy shifting? Is Washington changing course? Or was this simply personal opinion? Well, reports suggest that regional leaders, including those who are close to Saudi leadership, they express strong concern. In the Middle East, perception is powerful. Even unofficial remarks could be interpreted as signal, and signals can reshape alliances. That phrase, Israeli expansionism, it is deeply sensitive. It touches on decades of conflict, borders, sovereignty, identity. When American officials appear to validate aggressive territorial ideas, even hypothetically, it kind of unsettles the partners. So now, Washington is walking a tightrope, reassuring the Arab allies, maintaining support for Israel, and prevent diplomatic fallout all at the same time. This episode highlights a bigger reality here. In today's world, a podcast, it can trigger a geopolitical ripple. A single remark, it can complicate months of quiet negotiations. Diplomacy is no longer confined to conference rooms. It lives in interviews, in viral clips, in public narrative, and the question now is not just about one ambassador's words. It's about credibility. Can Washington convince Arab partners that its policy remains steady? Can it really continue the efforts to integrate Israel without alienating the key regional players? And can one clarification undo a week of outrage? Well, the Middle East watches carefully because in this region, history remembers every sentence. And sometimes the biggest diplomatic fires, it starts with just one comment.